The cameras were rolling. The audience was watching. But when Dr. Phil said, "Stop the tape," everyone knew this confession was about to change everything. It happened in the middle of what seemed like a routine taping. The studio lights were warm, the audience settled in their seats, and Dr. Phil was doing what he does best, asking the questions no one else dares to ask. But then, something shifted. A woman sitting on that iconic burgundy couch, her hands trembling slightly, looked directly at Dr. Phil and said 5 words that would stop the entire production. "I need to tell the truth." Dr. Phil's hand went up immediately. "Stop the tape," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the studio like a blade. The cameras stopped moving. The producers froze. The audience held its breath. Because in that moment, everyone in the room understood that what was about to happen wasn't scripted, wasn't planned, and certainly wasn't going to be easy. This is the story of how one woman's confession shattered the lies she'd been telling for years, how Dr. Phil broke every protocol to help her face the truth, and how a single envelope on that small table between them held the power to either destroy a family or finally set them free. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Her name was Sarah Mitchell. 34 years old, mother of 2, married for 12 years. She came to the Dr. Phil show because her family was falling apart, and she didn't know how to stop it. That's what she told the producers during the pre-interview. That's what she told herself every morning when she looked in the mirror. But that wasn't the whole truth. The real story started 3 years earlier, when Sarah's husband, Michael, began questioning things that didn't add up. Bills that appeared out of nowhere. Phone calls she wouldn't take in front of him. Nights when she said she was working late, but her office was dark when he drove by. Small things at first. Then bigger ones. Then things so big they couldn't be ignored anymore. Michael thought she was having an affair. That's what any reasonable person would think. And Sarah let him believe it. Because the truth, she thought, would be worse. So she crafted a lie so elaborate, so detailed, that even she sometimes forgot it wasn't real. She created text messages, fake email accounts, even a fictional man named David, who supposedly worked in her office building. She gave Michael just enough evidence to confirm his suspicions, just enough to make the affair story believable. But it wasn't an affair. It was something else entirely. Something Sarah had been hiding from everyone, including herself, for longer than she could remember. And now, sitting on Dr. Phil's stage with cameras pointed at her and an audience watching her every move, she realized she couldn't keep running from it anymore. Dr. Phil had started the show the way he always does, direct, no nonsense, getting straight to the point. "Sarah, your husband believes you've been unfaithful. He's here today because he wants answers. Are you ready to give them to him?" Sarah nodded. She'd rehearsed this part. She knew what she was supposed to say. The affair story was ready. The apology was prepared. But when she opened her mouth, different words came out. "Dr. Phil, I need to tell the truth. The real truth. Not the story I've been telling." That's when Dr. Phil raised his hand. "Stop the tape." Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. What happened next wasn't part of the show's plan. Dr. Phil stood up from his chair, walked over to Sarah, and sat down on the couch beside her, something he rarely does during a taping. He looked at her directly, his voice lower now, meant just for her even though dozens of people were watching. "Sarah, if you're about to tell me something different from what you told my producers, I need you to understand something first. Once you say it, you can't take it back. Your husband is backstage right now. Your family is watching. Are you absolutely sure you're ready for this?" Sarah's hands were shaking. Tears were already streaming down her face. But she nodded. "I've been lying to protect them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I realize now that the lie is what's destroying them. So yes, I'm ready." Dr. Phil turned to the cameras, to the producers standing just off stage. "I need everyone to clear the studio except essential personnel." This woman is about to share something deeply personal, and she needs space to do it. Then he looked at the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief pause. What you're about to witness when we return is raw, it's real, and it's going to be difficult. But it's also why we do this show, to help people find their way back to the truth, no matter how hard that truth might be. The audience was escorted out. The extra cameras were turned off. Only one remained, positioned at a respectful distance. Dr. Phil's team brought Michael out from backstage, but before he sat down, Dr. Phil spoke to him privately. Whatever he said, it was enough to prepare Michael for what was coming, or at least, as prepared as anyone could be. When they resumed, the atmosphere had completely changed. This wasn't a TV show anymore. It was an intervention. A moment of reckoning. And Sarah was at the center of it. "There's no affair," Sarah began, her voice steadier now despite the tears. "There never was. I made it up. I created David. I fabricated the evidence. I let Michael believe I was cheating on him because I thought it would be easier for him to hate me for that than to know the real reason I've been distant." Michael's face went through a dozen emotions in seconds: confusion, relief, anger, more confusion. "Then what is it?" he asked, his voice breaking. "What could possibly be worse than thinking my wife was with another man?" Sarah looked at Dr. Phil. He nodded, giving her permission to continue. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope, the same one that had been sitting on the table between them since the show started, though no one had mentioned it yet. She handed it to Dr. Phil. "This," she said, "is a medical diagnosis I received 3 years ago. I didn't tell Michael. I didn't tell my kids. I didn't tell anyone except my doctor. And instead of dealing with it, I created a lie so big that it consumed my entire life." Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. Dr. Phil held the envelope but didn't open it. Instead, he looked at Sarah with an expression that combined compassion and firm resolve. "Sarah, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Have you been living this lie because you're afraid of the diagnosis itself? Or because you're afraid of how it will change the way people see you?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. Tears came harder now. "Both," she finally said. "It's both. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to be the person everyone pities. I don't want my kids to grow up with a mother who's broken. So I pushed everyone away. I made Michael hate me. I made my children afraid of me. Because I thought if they were already distant, it would hurt less when I was gone." Michael stood up from his chair, his own tears falling now. "When you're gone?" he repeated, his voice barely audible. "Sarah, what are you talking about? What's in that envelope?" Dr. Phil looked at Sarah. "Do you want to tell him, or do you want me to read it?" "I'll tell him," Sarah said. She stood up, walked over to her husband, and took his hands in hers. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's disease. I'm 34 years old, and I'm losing my memory. I'm losing pieces of myself every day. The bills you found? I forgot to pay them. The nights I said I was working late? I was sitting in my car because I couldn't remember how to get home. The phone calls I wouldn't take in front of you. They were from my neurologist." The studio, already quiet, became impossibly quieter. Even the camera operator looked away, giving the moment the privacy it deserved despite being recorded. Michael pulled Sarah into his arms, holding her so tightly it seemed like he was trying to hold her together. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked through his tears. "Why would you go through this alone?" "Because I was terrified," Sarah said into his shoulder. "I was terrified you'd leave. I was terrified the kids would be scared. I was terrified I'd become a burden. So I thought if I made you hate me first, if I made you think I'd betrayed you, then when I got worse, you'd already be emotionally prepared to let me go." Dr. Phil, who had been watching this unfold with the practiced calm of someone who's seen thousands of difficult moments, finally spoke. "Sarah, what you've just described is one of the most profound acts of self-sacrifice I've encountered in my career. But it's also one of the most misguided. You tried to protect your family by destroying your family. Do you see that? Sarah nodded, still holding on to Michael. I see it now. I thought I was being strong. But I was just being scared. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Dr. Phil picked up the envelope from the table and handed it to Michael. I want you to read this, he said. Sarah's neurologist sent this to our show as part of the background information. But there's something in here that Sarah doesn't know yet. Something her doctor wanted to make sure she heard in a supportive environment. Michael opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a letter from Dr. Rebecca Chin, Sarah's neurologist. As Michael read it, his expression changed from devastation to something else. Something that looked almost like hope. Read it out loud. Dr. Phil instructed gently. Sarah needs to hear this. Michael cleared his throat, struggling to keep his voice steady. Dear Sarah, I know you stopped returning my calls 6 months ago. I know you've been avoiding follow-up appointments. But I need you to know that your most recent test results show something unexpected. The progression of your condition has slowed significantly, far more than we typically see in early-onset cases. While I cannot promise you a cure, I can tell you that with proper treatment, support, and lifestyle modifications, many patients with your profile maintain quality of life for decades. You are not dying tomorrow. You are not becoming a burden. You are a woman with a diagnosis who needs her family now more than ever. Please come back. Let us help you. You don't have to face this alone. The silence that followed was different from the others. This one was filled with the sound of Sarah's sobbing, not the quiet, suppressed kind, but the loud, unrestrained kind that comes when years of holding something in finally breaks free. Michael held her, Dr. Phil stood nearby, and for several minutes, no one said anything. They just let her cry. When Sarah could finally speak again, she looked at Dr. Phil with red, swollen eyes. I thought I was running out of time, she said. I thought I had maybe a few good years left. So I tried to make everyone hate me so they wouldn't miss me when I was gone. But I've wasted 3 years. 3 years I could have spent with my family. 3 years of memories I could have made while I still can. Dr. Phil sat down on the couch again, this time on the other side of Sarah, so she was between him and Michael. Sarah, you haven't wasted anything. You've learned something that many people never learn. That trying to control how people feel about you, especially the people who love you, is not only impossible but also incredibly destructive. Your husband didn't need you to be perfect. Your children don't need you to be fearless. They need you to be honest. They need you to be present. Even on the hard days. Especially on the hard days. Michael nodded, squeezing Sarah's hand. I would have stayed, he said simply. I would have stayed through all of it. I still will. But you have to let me. You have to let us help you. Dr. Phil reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. Sarah, I've already spoken with your neurologist, Dr. Chin. With your permission, we'd like to connect you with a team of specialists who work specifically with early-onset Alzheimer's patients and their families. We'd also like to set you up with a therapist who can help you process the fear and isolation you've been carrying. And most importantly, we want to give you and Michael the tools to rebuild the trust that's been damaged, not because of the disease, but because of the lie you felt you had to tell. Sarah took the card, holding it like it was the most precious thing in the world. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for stopping the tape. Thank you for giving me space to tell the truth. Thank you for not letting me keep running. Dr. Phil smiled, not his TV smile, but something more genuine. That's what we do here, Sarah. We create space for truth, no matter how messy or painful it might be. Because the truth, as hard as it is always better than a lie. Always. The show ended differently than most Dr. Phil episodes. There was no dramatic reveal, no shocking twist in the final moments. Instead, there was just Sarah and Michael, sitting together, holding hands, facing their future together instead of apart. As the cameras finally stopped rolling and the crew began breaking down the set, Dr. Phil watched them walk out of the studio together. The envelope that had held so much fear now sat empty on the table, a reminder that sometimes the truth we're most afraid to tell is the one that will set us free. Sarah didn't lie to hurt her family. She lied because she loved them. But what she learned that day is something Dr. Phil has been teaching for decades. Love without honesty isn't protection. It's isolation. And the people who love us don't need us to be perfect. They just need us to be real. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten.